Hi, my name is Jason Impey and I'm an independent filmmaker and have been for many years. I actually started making films when I was at the age of 10. I picked up my dad's camcorder, started filming some shorts, horror, got my dad to edit them on his VCR, and pretty much ever since then I've always been making films, mainly indie horror. And what got me into that really was the film Halloween, the original Halloween by John Carpenter. That was the first memory I have of watching a horror film. I was very young. I watched a VHS tape that was taped off the TV on the sly and loved it. I mean, I've been collecting films all my life, so the first actual video I got was GoBot's Battle of the Rock Lords. So I remember watching that as a first film. Loved it. Still have that video. It's a shame it's never been re-released actually properly on DVD or any of the new formats. But Halloween was my first real serious. I love this film. I want to do that when I'm older. I was always intrigued in how it was made and why it was made, rather than being scared and sucked in that way. I was just very fascinated with it and thought it was great. It was atmospheric and the shots, and so that left an impact on me. And that is a film responsible for pushing me into wanting to become a filmmaker. So, influences on becoming a filmmaker. Well, so films that I watched when I was young, like Halloween by John Carpenter, The Evil Dead by Sam Raimi, and Hellraiser by Clive Barker. These are some of the early films that I watched that really inspired me, and some of the filmmakers. I've always been a big fan of David Cronenberg as well. So I've got a mix of influences because I've just grown up watching film and loving film. So I have a wide range of influences. But if I'm really honest, what really got me into thinking I can do that, or I want to have a go, or make, is SOV, shot on video films and real indie films, especially German splatter films. I grew up always trying to get my hands on gory horror because I always loved indie and unique films. They were more challenging to taboo subjects than Hollywood was, so I was always into that side. So like Andreas Schnauz from the Violent Shit films, he was a massive influence, especially for my film Sick Bastard that I made, my first real feature film, indie film. He was a big influence to me, and a lot of underground indie filmmakers have been, really, old and new. Even seeing some new work from new filmmakers ignites my passion to carry on doing that and having another go at doing something different. So I'm forever influenced, I think, actually. I don't ever stop being influenced, but I like to put my own spin and take on things. But really, the whole movement of underground independent cinema has been a big influence on me. I've always wanted to contribute to that scene. So the first ever film that I personally made was when I was 10, and it was called Split Second. And it was a rip-off of the film Split Second, really, but I was a 10-year-old trying to remake my version. I thought I was making an epic film. I thought I was going to do a couple of hour epic. It turned out being about 10 minutes long. I still have the VHS master of that. It's still in existence. I was very disappointed of how it turned out. I actually thought I was making a mini masterpiece and really wanted it to be a good film, but it was a bit ropey. It's fun to look back on, but it was a real experience actually. Being that young, that's when I realised that it's not that easy making a film. But I had got a group of friends together. And loads of costumes, props. We had their house, different rooms for different locations. I'd really thought all this through, but yeah, and I think it also made me realise just how long it takes to make a film. I spent all evening there with them, trying to shoot this, and time was going, and we were going on and not getting it complete. And I got it complete in the end, but yeah, that was a battle. I even did a day of pickups and. Did the beginning in a separate day at my nan's house, and it was an ongoing project for a while, and it was actually a real learning curve at a young age. It ignited my passion. It made me want to do it more and get better at it. But it was a wake up call. This is going to be a tough old journey making films. But then after school and experimenting like that, I went to college to do filmmaking, and I did that for a few years. Did 3 years at college doing film studies and media and video production and stuff. And I did a lot of student films and some videos for my assignments. But then, when I broke free from the boundaries of education, I made my first actual film in my late teens. So I had got out of college and I was just turning 20, and I made my first short film purely on my own. Got some friends to get cast and crew together, but this was, I'd studied it, I'd had some investment, I'd started freelancing as a camera operator for live events and corporate work, and so I had my kit, and I went and made a short film called Obsession. I spent 2 days shooting that, and this is still back in the days of analogue editing. I was still analogue editing this film, and I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It really excited me. I was a bit disappointed with how it turned out. I wanted it to be better, but I was still, learning about it in an educational facility is one thing. Actually going out and making a film is another. You can put your knowledge into use, but it's a war zone. It's a minefield out there. I learned so much more by actually making my own films and studying it. It's unreal. I'm glad I studied it and it was great, but I learned so much more by just making films and the people you meet along the way and the people you work with and collaborating and trial and error and experimenting. It's all very, I do recommend it if people are interested in film and want to do it. It's such a learning curve just to get out there and do it. But the thing is, you've got to take it all and a pinch of salt as well, because it can be disheartening. Like, as I said, this film Obsession I made was very disheartening at first. It's grown on me more. I mean, I've got some great gore in there. It was one of my gorier efforts, actually, even to this day. It was good like that, but it was hard work, and it was a 10-minute film. It got screened at some festivals, and I got it released on an anthology that I did later in the years, I got maximum use out of it. It was well worth doing. And I'm pleased I did, actually. I'm really pleased I did. I have fond memories of it. It was a good little team. In fact, I miss that team a bit. A lot of these people have gone on to do other things and even emigrated abroad, and not many of them around anymore. But that was a great little team. And if I'm honest with you, that original raw filmmaking that I did was some of my favourite and most fond memories of doing it. And some of the results back in my earlier days I really do love. So that was when I was really in my zone. So, special effects and effects in my films. Well, it's interesting. I've done a lot of gory stuff. I've used a lot of offal from the butchers. We went for a stage of getting like pigs' lungs and hearts and tongues and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff, and putting a lot of fake blood on it and using that as entrails. Not everyone was keen on that. Cast and crew not always so happy. One of these experiences that was horrible is I made a indie feature in 2006 called Homemade, and there was a gutting scene at the end where I play Jack Hess and I decapitate and pull apart Matthew Verity, the actor in it, and we had to shoot bits on and off and delay stuff. There's all kinds of issues with that film. I spent 9 months making that film, like 6 months shooting it throughout the year. It was a ongoing, at times horrendous project, but basically it was filmed, this particular bit was filmed in the summer, really hot summer of 2006, and I had some meat that I was going to use for the special effects. And what I'd done is I'd put it in the coal shed, just keeping it stored for a few extra days and a week, just so I could carry on using it with what we're doing. I really didn't think this through. I had a lot going on because I was writing it as I went along, kind of, this film. I produced it, directed it, I was acting in it. I even filmed it and shot myself in it, was actually setting up the camera, filming myself in it, and editing it as I went along. So I had all this going on in my head. I didn't really think about putting this meat in this coal shed. So when it comes to the final bit of filming of this special effects, this meat had gone rotten, like really rotten. It stank of corpses, it had maggots all in it, and I got it out, and as I opened the door and opened this meat, this fucking waft of horrible shit just went in my face. I could taste it, I could smell it, and I was physically sick. I was spewing up on set. It made me really ill. It was disgusting, like absolutely vile. So that was not a great experience. It's funny to look back on, and there is behind the scenes documentation of me spewing everywhere, which made its way into the behind the scenes documentary of that film. So for the world to see that. But it turned out quite good, that effect, and it was really gory in the end. So you suffer for your art, and you know, I'd have no regrets. And I didn't really get too ill. It was just more. I'm quite tolerant of things, but that smell forever haunt me. That was like worse than dead bodies. That was really rank, and I won't be doing that again in a hurry, I can assure you. Fake blood's great. That goes everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I use golden syrup and red food dye quite a lot mixed together to give this thick texture, and that stuff is so sticky, and the red food dye gets in everything and won't come out. It stains people's skin pink. They have to have quite a few showers to get that out. The amount of people I've sent off on their way, bright pink or like a red lobster. Many times people have had makeup, prosthetic makeup on them and forgot they've had it on and gone off to the shops or gone home, driving home, and had people look at them strangely. Had an actor go into a local shop after we'd finished filming. He had scars and blood on him, and the shopkeeper was just stood there looking, thinking, oh, what's going on? And the actor was like, well, what's the problem? And then he came out and saw himself reflection in the car in the mirror, and he was like, oh, I've still got this makeup on. And he got in the car to us getting some stuff, and he was like, I wondered why the shopkeeper was asking if I was alright, and was looking at me strangely. So there's many situations like that. But I love playing around with gore effects. I'm not so keen getting all the special effects on my camera equipment though, so but yeah, it's been good times. Distribution for independent films is a nightmare in my mind. I've been lucky and had a lot of distribution worldwide, mainly in America, and I've dealt with a few distributors and they've put them on VOD and DVD and stuff. I've always tried to get UK releases, and I have had and been involved with some minor UK releases, but it's never been great. I find that distributors don't like gambling so much in the UK, especially because you have to pay the BBFC fees, which to me are a rip-off. It's a real barrier, that BBFC. Like, rating's fine, and it's fine putting a rating on, but the payments you have to make just to get your work out is horrendous. It's already hard enough to make a return off indie films, let alone having to have more outgoings. And I also know that really over the bigger picture that the UK is looked upon as a small little island, and so we're kind of a bit overlooked. And I find at this day and age, if you get your work distributed on DVD on like an American shop, Amazon.com, you can just import it in really cheap and easily in the UK, because a lot of them are region 0, they're unlocked. So it doesn't stop it so much. It just means basically online shopping's bigger than ever, and you just go online and get it. It would be really nice to have a proper UK release and physically go down to your local shop, HMV or something, and pick it up and have a look. But you know, it's very hard. There's a lot of criteria you've got to hit, and if you're working on a low budget film, it's as hard as it is, let alone meeting some of the criteria demands. And you've got to try and stand out, haven't you? And then you've got the censors and the ratings here. Although it's got more relaxed, it's still, they can be funny at times. I love physical media because I'm a film collector, and I love it when my stuff comes out on DVD. So much so I've turned a deal down in the past for distribution because it was a VOD only, and I don't mind it being on VOD, but it had to have a DVD release as well, which I managed to secure in the end, like get them both. But I don't mind VOD, I do use a service, but it's a shame if that is going to be just it, and they're going to try and fade physical media out, because it's nice to have the artwork and addition with the extras and physically have something for your money and watch and collect and have on the shelf. I like that. I think it's a shame if it's just going to be digital files and all in the cloud and so to speak. That's not great. I love it and embrace it, but as long as, you know, I love getting a digital copy as an extra feature and things like that. But I would much rather own a physical copy than a digital copy any day. But I find distribution not too bad if you're going for the American release. What I will say is, over the years, filmmaking's become more accessible to people. So there's a lot more competition out there. There's a lot more people doing it, and it is harder to stand out from the crowd. And it has made distributors a bit more selective. You know, they have to be careful what they release. They don't release any old crap. But you having to fight to get above a lot of other films now to get noticed or to get your work out there. I think I was fortunate that I started out young, and I've been making films for many years now, and started distributing many years ago, and built up some relationships with some people and managed to get a workflow going. But if I was to start now, I'd be more terrified than ever, because it's so much harder, really. Easier to make films in one way, harder to get them seen and released. I mean, the internet is amazing for getting your work promoted, or if you just want to release it yourself on video platforms, but then that's not great either, because your work's out there to the public, it's getting seen great, but then there's no returns at all. There's no returns to help you carry on and make another film. So that can be a shame. So physical media for me, or physical media way. I have noticed a new trend. I've noticed a new wave of people making their own independent films and self-distributing. Self-distributing seems to be on the rise, which I've looked into, but it's hard. It's a lot of work, and if I'm already like making the film, planning a film, trying to do another film, it's hard to fit in. It's hard to fit in promoting it, let alone self-distributing it. If you're making films as well, so especially if you're doing a lot on your own, because a lot of independent films and independent filmmakers are doing a lot. They're wearing a number of hats, and so the more you have to do and the more time consuming, it just becomes very hard and fitting everything in. So yeah, it's. If I wasn't so passionate and lived for films and if it was such a hobby, then yeah, I would have walked away a long time ago. You've got to really love this. You've got to really appreciate it to stay in it, because it's a tough old game. I've had many funny stories and experiences with filmmaking. Some not all good. But I was filming Tortured, my epic film, years ago, and the actor had a fake gun on him, a blank firing gun on him. He was playing a hard character, like a gangster kind of character, and he had these blank firer, which wasn't loaded, it was empty, but that's strapped on him. He's got his leather coat on, his gun underneath. And we stopped at a fast food restaurant to get some dinner on the way. We'd done one shoot at one location, was going to the next one. Long day, 20-hour day. But I'd stopped to get some fast food. He needed the toilet really badly. He went in there and he asked at the counter, "Where's the loo?" But he was still in character a bit, I think. He was playing such a nasty, hardcore character. He was all in this zone. He's like, "Where's your toilet? Where's your toilet?" And they pointed. He went round then, and the door was a bit wedged. He couldn't get in. So he was stressed out, and he came up to the counter. He's like, "Man, what's going on? Why won't the door open?" And he's like throwing his arms around. And as he's doing all this with his arms, he reveals his gun, to which all the people, all the children, and mums and dads in this fast food restaurant, all sat there, all quiet, all too scared to move, because all they could see was a crazy man waving his arms around with an armed gun on him. And this was years ago. This was now, I think, to be shot. But I realised what was happening. I panicked. I thought, right, let's quickly get the food, threw the money over and go, let's get out of here. Ushered him out, got him in the corner, whizzed off, and we never heard anything. So thankfully they probably didn't see the vehicle we drove off in, but I think we scared the life out of those families that day. Looking back on it, it was funny. At the time I was mortified, because I've had the police turn up many times on my sets, people phoning in because people have been getting supposedly beaten up, or God knows what people think. But there's always cameras and mics and crew around. It's always pretty obvious we're making a film, but you know, I've had unlucky situations where we were filming on a field near my local shop, and unbeknown to me, there'd been an armed robbery at the local shop while we were filming, and just before this armed robbery, we'd been there and bought lunch. I had loads of bags from this local shop and food from there, and we're out there with the camera kit, and two police come walking over, and you know, you just think, oh, you know, I need to get on making this film. I've got enough stress going on, let alone this happening. But they came over, explained to us that the local shop had been robbed. They see all the local shop goods there. So they started searching my kit. They got really suspicious of the tripod case because they thought that was a gun. Because of a tripod case, like, what's in the bag? And they wouldn't let anyone touch it to open it. And yeah, it's such a pain. I mean, looking back, it's funny, but it's made me a lot more nervous and weary of guerrilla filmmaking because I get fed up with having to deal with all this stress. So I like to try and make things as easy as I can for myself. So they're funny, but they also make me really think about, like, how should I approach the next shoot without having to live any of these disasters again. What drives me to carry on making films, though, is that I just do live for films and cinema. I love films. I've grown up watching films since I was 5 and collecting them. I've always thoroughly enjoyed watching films. I get excited when I discover new films or talent. You know, I love the art form of filmmaking. It's always appealed to me, the moving image. I find it fascinating. I love the way subjects are tackled. The more daring a film, the better to me. But I just have a lot of fun, even with my family watching family films. I just live for watching films, and that and me being so into films fuels me to want to be a filmmaker and carry on through the hard times. And I've had some really depressing hard times of it, and I've had some low moments, and I've been on the real edge of it all. But when I finally get a film finished, to see that end result, it just makes it all good again. So, like, I'll get through it all, and then I'll see this finished result, and if I get a screening with it, or get some distribution, or even get a positive review or comment, it's like, yes, yes, yes. But then obviously I have to take the hard times of it, like bad reviews, bad feedback, not getting the film released, getting rejected from festivals and screening. I've had all that as well. And even when I'm at my worst, there is still a flame there, not quite blown out. So I'm just like, well, I want to do another one, I want to have another go, or, you know, someone out there might like it, you know, because not everyone's going to like every film, and you can't please everyone, especially some of the films I've made. They've been a niche market and a niche taste anyway, so that was always going to be a challenge to find your audience. But it's just a passion, you know, as long as you don't lose that passion. And I do enjoy it, although it's had hard times. When I'm actually setting a shot up and lighting it and doing a funky shot on a slide or a jib, it's just very exciting and thrilling, and it's still as exciting as it was when I was young starting out, which is great. So, you know, I think it's always going to be there. I'm never gonna not want to make films, and I'm forever going to love watching films and collecting films. It's been with me since the beginning, and it'll be with me till the end. Advice I'd give to up and coming filmmakers is just go out and make a film if you can. I know it's easier said than done, but even if you just get a few friends together, even yourself on a smartphone these days. I've even got a smartphone and run out and shot an art little film myself and got it screened. So just have a go. You know, the more experience you can get and the more studying it will help. But if you can, just go out and make a little film. Find your style, find your feet, and live the experience from the beginning to end, just so you can appreciate and understand the process more. That's my advice to you. And try and stand out. It's easier said than done, but be true to yourself as well. Like, don't try and make something just to please people. You don't want to be a self-indulgent filmmaker, make all this stuff yourself, but you should be making it, as it's a passion and a hobby and it's something you want to do, you should still be making it partly for yourself as well as an audience. Try and find the balance between the two, really. But just pick up a camera or phone and have a go, honestly, and just keep doing it. Just keep experimenting, and sooner or later, hopefully, opportunities will arise. Just don't be disheartened or give up, because it is hard. You're going to have a lot of knockbacks, and just try and focus on the positives and not the negatives, because it is very easy to be overwhelmed and get stressed out of all the shit, and it ain't nice. Just try and rise above the crap and look at the bigger picture and the positives is what I would say. I think the future of filmmaking is exciting in one way. I think there's going to be more films than ever and loads more content and even some good originality work. What worries me is physical format dying out, and the rise of 4K is interesting. I'm not sure how well that will take off because it sounds good, and I've shot in 4K and it is exciting, but the power you need for editing and upgrading equipment again, which is so expensive, and to keep up with technology is horrendous. But I think the future of filmmaking just is a positive one. I think there's a lot more exciting talent and films to come. Equipment is getting cheaper as well, so it's even more accessible than ever. And with the internet now bigger than ever, with video web services, there's easier ways to watch it and get content. But my concern is that the death of physical format, that I do find sad, and I hope it won't fully die out. But there's a lot of talk about it, and it is something I'm anxious about. But I'm remaining positive, and I think there's always going to be a collector niche market, and as long as there's that market there, those collectors there, it will be offered to them. So that's what I'm hoping, and that's what I'm sticking with. Horror films will always be around forever. Horror films is the horror genre is appealing to the horror genre. The future of horror films is good, I think, because the horror genre is appealing to a wide range of audiences, and it's a flexible genre. Horror is always made relevant to the new generation and tackles issues that are relevant in their life. And people always love going to the movies to have a jump or a scare. It's a traditional thing. And then with like things like Halloween every year and stuff, there's always going to be the interest in horror. It's a popular genre. It's an easy to make genre. You can get away with silly things like a bit of cheesy acting, a bit of cheesy effects. It's easier to market than like a straight drama. You don't need such A-listers in it. It's easier than comedy, because comedy can be very challenging. But if it is horror and a bit silly, the comedy and the ham and cheese goes hand in hand. So there's a lot of reasons why horror will always be with us and always be a popular genre. So I'm never worried about the horror genre. I'm a big horror fan. I love making horror films, and it's forever going to have a market. Even if there is a niche market for certain bits of it, it's always there. It's always going to find a way. You're never going to wash of the horror genre. Plus, people always want more and more. The audience, they've got more gory and violent and violent. I remember when there was taboo and video nasties, and they were quite bad, some of them. But now, there's such over the top gore out there. Everyone's always trying to outdo one another, so there's always more and more people who are trying to get that bigger hit, bigger rush. So I don't know how far it's going to be too far. I think I've seen it all, but just when I think I've seen it all, you might see something new. So it's exciting times to see all this new, crazy, wacky ideas from people around the world coming together. Horror films that I'll be watching in 20 years' time. Well, I don't know, really. I think whatever situation the world is in 20 years' time, there'll be horror films reflecting the issues in the world of that era. Definitely. So I'll be watching relevant horror films, I would say. And classics, because I love watching classics. I will still be watching some of the horror films from many years ago. Back in 20 years, in 20 years' time, I'll still be looking back at some of my favourite horror films, and horror films that have just come out now that I love. I will be revisiting and watching again. I love rewatching films. You can never get bored of a good film. I've got so many favourite films and so many films I love to rewatch. So I'll be watching old and new and relevant horrors to the time. The next trend in horror is an interesting one, because, we went through the found footage stage, which is dying down a bit. Still a little bit knocking about. I've still seen the odd found footage film coming out. But we went through a bit of a ghost phase recently of tense, creepy, atmospheric, ghostly horrors, which is still knocking about a bit. That seems to be an in thing at the moment. I've certainly been asked about doing that sort of thing. But then in the indie scene, the snuff genre is still knocking about. That's made a little bit of I've noticed more rise in the snuff subgenre of the indie horror. So I think that's a trend that's going to be knocking about for a little while, if I'm honest. It's an exciting one. I really enjoyed the American Guinea Pig Boutiques of Guts and Gore. That was great. I was a backer to that, and it really was a throwback to the old snuff style film. So that's almost again inside some flooding in of the sub snuff genre again. So I've made many films, like feature films and shorts, over the years, and it's been quite a process from start to beginning. But my film, Tortured, is an interesting one, looking at an in-depth point of view, because I had an initial idea while making a short film about two criminals that were a bit stupid, and they'd killed a girl and they was trying to get rid of the body and they weren't very good at it. That silly idea that I had for a while making this zombie short in the woods escalated into a feature script that I wrote, which ended up becoming quite a modern day nasty. So I spent months writing it, getting it right, finding the right cast and crew, getting a bit of money and getting this together, and booking in shoot dates and working towards that. And we worked very hard on that film, mainly me behind the scenes putting it all together. Like, I got all the locations, I planned very well how we were going to shoot it at the locations. I really did all my paperwork on this one, location plans, and said scripts and shot lists and storyboards, and pre-production special effects tests that we filmed, and everything, anything I could think of I covered. Came to the shoot. It went well, but it was mad. 5 long days of 20 hours a day, that film. And then I even did some pickups in January. We shot the end of November, beginning of December, and then in January I went and did some pickups to wrap it up and finish it off. And it all got shot. It was hard. It was tense. It was cabin fever was setting in. I had my cast and crew all living under one roof, staying there. There were some tense moments, ups and downs. People I won't ever work with again from that production, for various reasons. The problem is people can't always see from the filmmaker's point of view how hard it is to make a film from beginning to end, and the time and the effort and the money and the mental exhaustion that goes into this. But anyway, we shot it and we got through it. I'm glad I did it. I look back with sort of fond memories, not all fond memories, I must say, unfortunately, but I got through it, and it was a film I wanted to make. Then the editing began, and the editing went on, and it went on. But I got there, but I did 3 cameras on some of it to make sure we got all the coverage, and we was up against a tight schedule and that, so I had loads of footage, I had all kinds of syncing and grading, and I worked with a good musician that composed some good songs and sent over, so all this going on. So then got the editing all done, which I pretty much hibernated on my own, which I like to do. I like to sit there, and I enjoy the editing a lot sometimes more than the filming. I love the filming, but the filming is like you're out on the field, you're having to deal with all these issues, all these people, all this hard stuff. It's sometimes nice to sit down and relax without any hassle, turn the phone off, escape the world, sit there and bring your film together when it is coming together, until you realise you've missed shots or continuity is wrong or something's not working, and then you have to think, how are you going to get around this? But I normally get around an edit, I'll find a way, and this edit did come together. So then the edit was done, I had to try and get the film out there. We did a screening, and it was good. We screened at the Prince Charles Cinema in London. But getting people to come to that, filling that up, or getting media people, reviewers, distributors, try and get people to come so I could take the film to the next level. That was a challenge, and there was good feedback and bad, but I was trying to make an extreme film so we had people walk out because they were offended by it, which in one way is good. I achieved what I wanted to do. But it is, but then then the distribution began. So I got it screened and started to get it out there, but you know, it didn't go great for getting distribution. I'm still stuck with this film that I'd made, spent money on, and wanted to get released. So I started searching for distributions, old and new, talked to people. I found a distributor, and it was an alright deal. I wanted to get a better deal than I had for my previous films, because I'd done a few features at this point, and this was my most ambitious and biggest to scale at the time, and it still is really. A lot of effort and work and money went into that. So I wanted to get something half decent, but I had to settle for the average deal in the end after burning a lot of, you know, I tried. I had many doors closed on my face, which was disheartening. So I finally get this release, and I have to spend ages waiting for it. I mean, ages. I think like a year went by until I actually finally see the DVD come out and I could promote it. By this time it was old news to me and people that knew of it, so I had to reignite the interest in the film. And other films have come out by then, which, believe it or not, people thought were an influence on my film, which they weren't, because it hadn't even been made when I shot my film. So it took years to get this film planned, wrote, shot, edited, and then released. Absolute years. And then because I got reviews and feedback eventually, like more and more coming in as it got released, I realised that I could have made actually a better film. I could see some mistakes or what went wrong, even though I'd done a lot of prep. So I actually revisited it 4 years after originally starting it, shot some new scenes and recut the film into probably what should have been the original version. But I went back and did it anyway, so I ended up doing this definitive version, which then I did manage to get distributed as well at a similar time. It didn't take as long to get the other one out. And so I'm really glad I did do that, and I actually maximised the use of that, really. So I managed to get 2 versions of film released in the end, and get both versions seen. So they're similar but also very different at the same time. So I'm glad I did it. It was a journey and a half. So that was Tortured, my film Tortured, aka Sex Slave, but actually the definitive version that was released was called Psychopaths. And the distributor whacked Sex with Hostages, so it's known as Psychopaths, Sex with Hostages. I just know it as Psychopaths. So this film has many names just to add confusion to people, so it's become a bit of a mythical film actually. It's quite funny. It's become a lot of people, like, I was even reading some conversations in forums about it recently. Interesting to see all these people's knowledge and input into it. It was a mad film that was. What a journey. Advice I would give for doing something on a low budget, like a producer or director, is I would say, honestly, be really careful who you work with. Make sure you only put good cast and crew. They don't have to be amazing actors or Oscar winning. What I mean is, like, their attitude, be nice, and then be nice people. Not it only takes one bad seed to worm their way in a project and poison it and become ugly. And it's happened many times to me, and it's really drove me to the edge. It's nearly cost me everything, actually. I'm very serious about, like, really be careful who you work with. You know, it is good to try and please people. Obviously, you can't split yourself in half and go out, but try to look after your cast. I would say use minimal crew. You don't need a lot of people to make a film, actually, crew-wise. I do a lot myself. It's nice to have a hand and a bit of help, but you don't need like a 20-person crew. It slows you down. It costs more money because you have more people to look after for food or worry about transport. So just cut your crew down. Although it'd be a tough going, it will save pennies. And as I say, try and find people that respect your work and want to do it, and maybe build their stuff a show up and not just try and rinse you for silly expenses and that. I know everyone has to make a living and everyone has to get by, but you've got to find a balance so that you don't have this this war zone that I've experienced, which has put me off in the past of making films. Never quite blew my flame out, but has really upset me and pushed me to the edge. And I've been to dark places through that, which I don't ever want to go to again. So it's just made me very wise and weary of who I will have on a set and who I will work with. I tread very carefully. So my biggest advice is just choose wisely who you wish to collaborate and work with. Now, I've made a lot of films, so it's hard to choose one that I love a lot, like, out of all of my work. But I have a soft spot for my film, The Baker, a short film I did, because it was a great fun little shoot. The gore was spot on, and it was just very fast and punchy, and it gives people a little grin or a smile as well as grossing them out. So I achieved everything I wanted to do with that film. So I have a little soft spot for that. I think I hit the nail on the head with that film. I think that came together exactly how I wanted it. I got exactly what I wanted from that film. Really, I was very pleased with the outcome and the response. And as I said, I just think that film just came together nicely and well. Thinking of all the films I've done. I do have very. I have a warm feeling inside me for my feature film Sick Bastard, because I was actually out there guerrilla and making raw independent film at its rawest with that film, and I was thinking outside the box. I was thinking on set, and I was just making a real indie raw film, and the way I did that, I feel like I achieved some very fun, creative stuff, and I just have a warm feeling about that film because I feel like I was in a very creative zone back then, and it came together how I wanted it to, and I wanted to make a film, but I just wanted to also go out and just experiment and have fun and just enjoy the world of filmmaking. I wasn't, I'd set myself no real hard criteria that I had to hit. I was just going with the flow, and it was nice, relaxed and fun. So it fills me with warm memories, and that was what it was all about, really. Being out in the woods, shooting some gore, indie, amateur horror film. That was great, really. It was great times. I miss some of my old independent filmmaking days because it's harder to get cast these days. The more you do, the more people expect, because they'll see your IMDb, they'll think, "Oh, you've done a lot." But it's not easy. If anything, I'm harder off than I was, and getting locations is harder than ever. Because if you use stuff up or you maximise your resources in other films, it all starts drying out. So I'm still plodding on, but yeah. And there was some good times back in the day. It was easy, and it just, I didn't have so many responsibilities. The finances were a bit more relaxed, and life was just a bit different, actually. Life has become harder. The more I've had to do work, the more kit I've had to buy to do work, and the more work I've had to get to pay for the kit. Like doing freelance camera and editing, the more clients that have built up, life's just become harder and more pressured. So it's just made the whole thing much more of a pressured bubble, but that's going to burst any time. But it's some of my old films, I just look back with fond memories. They were good, emotionally, mentally, and physically was all there on cue. And indie horror is always important, really, because Hollywood films shy away from tackling taboo subjects. Indie horror goes straight for your throat and being there. They're loud, they're offensive, they're abusive, and they're just bloody good fun. You see things that are outrageous if you've got that sense of humour, and they will challenge subjects that Hollywood would just simply shy away from, and you can have a bloody good laugh with indie horror. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Hollywood can take itself very seriously at times. Indie horror won't take itself seriously. You can have fun, a good popcorn, chill flick. Have a laugh, have fun, watching some crazy stuff. You get everything in a good old indie film. You know, you can have good fun with it. Doesn't take itself serious. You'll see things you won't see in a Hollywood film. If you're trying to find a film that will push boundaries or push the bar, you know, an indie film will take it that one step further than a Hollywood film, and it'll be a finger up to the industry, which can be a very corrupt industry. Hollywood can be a very corrupt industry. An indie film can mock that and reflect that quite well.